So it says setting up your meeting for Facebook Live, and oftentimes this part is on there,
Okay,
but it's toggling its way across, and I'll let you know when I actually see us there.
perfect. I don't think we've tried this yet.
Okay, so we're there. My name is Mandy, and I'm with COVID Recovery Iowa. And today I'm talking with One Iowa, Courtney Reyes. Is that how you say your last name?
Reyes.
Reyes. Okay. So thanks for joining us today, Courtney. And Courtney, if you just want to start out, well, let me just tell you that COVID Recovery Iowa is here for emotional support and to connect people to resources during and as the pandemic makes its way through our community and after the derecho. That's what we're here for. And Courtney Reyes is going to tell us a little bit about One Iowa and the services One Iowa provides. So have at it, Courtney. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, my name is Courtney. I'm the executive director of One Iowa, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. One Iowa, you may have heard of us before, but we actually started as the marriage equality organization here in the state, and we are just coming up on the 12th anniversary of marriage equality in Iowa. So we were third in the nation, little tiny Iowa here in the Midwest, to get marriage equality. And so the ruling that Justice Katie, the Supreme Court Justice, wrote was used all over the country to really overturn these laws all across the nation. And so we played a really pivotal role in that. So we are about to celebrate that on April 3rd. Check out our Facebook and our website. We have an event on April 6th that we'd love for you to join. We're going to be talking with the co-founder of One Iowa and learning about what life was like back then, because I wasn't a part of that fight. So I'm really excited to learn about that history. So I always like to start of where we started, and now we really looked at what do we need to be doing to improve the lives of LGBTQ Iowans. That's right there in our mission statement, and we take that very seriously. And so we looked around and noticed that LGBTQ individuals do not have access to affirming healthcare, especially the trans and non-binary community. So we spend a lot of time educating healthcare providers, putting on conferences, and not just physical healthcare providers, but mental health care providers, dentists, chiropractors, everybody in between, that you might need to go to the doctor. And if you're not in the LGBTQ community, you just show up and you go, and they call you by your right name and use your correct pronouns. And the LGBTQ community doesn't have that advantage. So we are trying to educate people so people can show up and get affirming healthcare. So that's our first area. Our second area that we spend a lot of time is very similar, but it has to do with the workplace. So about half of LGBTQ people are not fully out at work. So imagine, Mandy, showing up to work and you're not talking about your family or talking about what you did this weekend, or making any of those those connections that we need as human beings, because you don't want to come out because you don't know what the response is going to be. So folks deal with that all the time here in our state. And so we really educate workplaces on how to be more affirming to the LGBTQ community, and not just LGBTQ folks, but our work is really intersectional, because one of the biggest myths I spend my time dispelling is that LGBTQ people are just white folks in Iowa. No, like, we make up a wide range of individuals. And so when we're advocating for the LGBTQ community, we're also advocating for the Black, Brown, Indigenous, people of color, people with different abilities, learning styles, things like that. We really try to challenge you to think about, how does your workplace impacting the folks that are there?
That makes me think of something you were talking about earlier about what a heterosexual world that we live in. And
Yeah.
maybe this would be a good time to kind of speak to that. What does that mean?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm a married person. I have a wedding ring on. I can't tell you the amount of times that for some reason is a sign that you can ask somebody what your husband does. If I'm a femme presenting person, and I don't have a husband, so automatically I feel very taken back. Like, I have a choice. I can come out right now, or I can just glaze over and don't talk to this person anymore. Like, am I going to be safe? And safety is a very big concern for the LGBTQ community because we don't know how people are going to respond. And if you've seen in our Iowa legislature, there were 15 anti-LGBTQ bills introduced. So that it makes our state right now does not feel very safe. And so we are always kind of doing this dance of, is it safe for me to come out at this moment? And so that happens in parenting a lot, because our world is set up for a mom, a dad, a little boy and a little girl, white picket fence, and a dog, right? Like this is like what we believe families look like. And a good reminder is that families look like all kinds of families. Maybe it's a grandma, grandpa, and a little kiddo. It's two moms and some kids and a divorced dad. And, you know, like we make up so many different things, but I know every time that I sign my kids up for soccer, I have to send some sort of intro email that says, I'm Finn's mom. This is his other mom. This is my ex-husband, and this is his girlfriend. Otherwise, we get these like squiggled looks of like, who are all these people? I'm like, we're his hype crew. Like we come, like we're gonna come and we'll show up and we're gonna support our kid. And that's what I need you to know. So lots of heteronormativity in our
Yeah,
society.
I'm sure you being able to and willing to share that information when needed is helpful to your children, I would think. But I also just think that it seems like a lot of pressure and anxiety. It seems like personal information that not everyone needs to know, but
Yeah.
you're put in a position regularly that you feel like I have to decide right now whether to share this or not. I mean, that's
Absolutely. And like, is that going to impact my kiddo? Like, are you going to treat him differently on soccer if because you just don't know, because it's not a everybody is like, oh yeah, absolutely affirming and you know, anti or not pro LGBTQ, which is we're just trying to exist as humans. But I do love to follow that up with a story of my oldest son was playing baseball a couple of summers ago, and he was in the dugout, and I went up and talked to him. And then my wife went up and talked to him. And then I heard a little kid say, "Hey, Finn, do you have two moms?" And he was like, "Yeah." And the little kid said, "Oh, they bring really cool snacks." Like, this is not an issue for kiddos. It's often the parents who really struggle with thinking of this as a bigger deal than it is. Like, no, we're just two people who want to show up for our kiddo and bring good snacks. So I always love to remind folks that the kids are all right. Like that is a learned behavior. And so talking at home with your kiddos that families all look different is one of the best ways you can support queer families, is by not everybody looks like us. But that, I mean, those are conversations we should be having with our kiddos anyways, about race and ethnicity and class and sexism. And I try to have those conversations openly at home, so it doesn't seem like a big and scary topic. It's just things that we're talking about, that everybody's different.
and I just think about our culture and our learned behaviors, and we were talking earlier about, so say you're a teenager and somebody says, oh, so you got a boyfriend, and that instantly puts them into this moment, similar to what you were talking about earlier. But so if you're a parent or an adult that works with kids or whatever, and we have this kind of lingo ingrained in our brains, in our culture, what advice would you give them? Because I think I'm just thinking maybe, I mean, you don't want to say the wrong thing.
Yeah,
I think there could be a lot of parents out there that maybe feel that way.
absolutely. Something to always remember, that your intent is really important. So if your child is knowing that you're coming from a really loving place, that's going to mean a lot. And so if it's with curiosity and not judgment, I always feel like that's a really great way to say something I say a lot. I'm not an expert. Like, I know this is like you, I think you have it touted as like, we're going to bring in an expert, like, but I'm always learning too. I'm a cisgender person. I'm not a trans person. So I am always learning about the trans community and how to be a better support for them. And just saying that, like, maybe I'm not going to say this correctly, but like, I would love to ask you this question. Is that okay? And so just having that really open conversation, but really de-gendering our language can be so powerful. So, for example, instead of asking like, do you have a boyfriend? Is there anybody that makes your stomach feel all tickly inside? You know, like you can ask those questions without labeling the other gender that you're trying to inquire about, because then maybe your child is interested, if she's a girl, maybe she's interested in another girl, and if you're always asking her about a boyfriend, that would be really hard to come out to. And so how can we just de-gender those things? We do it in our house a lot. I love how you said we have to unlearn. It's one of my main goals in parenting, is how do I give my boys more information now so they have to unlearn less, that they just grow up with that thought process of like, oh yeah, like why am I assigning gender to everything? One of the prime examples at my home is one time I said, oh, is that doctor, I wonder where he went to school. And I didn't know the gender. And my son was like, or could it be a girl, mom? Like, why is that a boy doctor? And it was like, absolutely. Like, and so that's a perfect way to use a gender neutral pronoun of, I wonder where they went to school. Because our brains are set up and our world is set up in a binary of male and female. And if the more we can embrace that there are non-binary folks and that not everybody fits into those categories, and we eliminate that constantly gendering things, that's a really huge support for our kiddos.
I think I'm just thankful that you're here and educating us. This is so helpful. So Katie says, I try so hard to say partner or spouse, to not assume, is one of the comments in there. And that speaks to exactly what you were just saying.
That's great job, Katie. I like that.
Anybody else, feel free to put your comments or any questions in there.
I want to piggyback on what Katie said. I always like to listen for the language that other folks are using. So you may not know that I call my wife, but if you were to ask my wife, she would call me her spouse. It was actually in our our wedding ceremony, I called her my wife and she called me her spouse, because that word works better for me and that word works better for her. So there's just you have to listen to the cues of what other people say. I also introduced myself with my pronouns. I always introduce myself with my pronouns. It's a great way to open the door for someone who maybe uses different pronouns than what you believe their gender identity is. Like, that's not for us to decide, but it's a great way to open the door for trans and non-binary folks who really need to say their pronouns, so you get them right. And then I listen for those cues. How do I refer to myself? How do I refer to the people around me? Great tip for your kiddos' friends. While you may not believe that you have an LGBTQ kiddo, maybe their friends are. And if they can hear that language in your house, that really affirming and supportive language, what a huge support for them, because kids having a supportive adult in their life is such a huge way, a huge, incredible way. It's so small, but like to reduce their suicide attempts and to reduce the mental health struggles with kiddos, because they need those affirming adults in their life. And so I always try to remember, well, this may not be my kiddo, but what if their best friend is in the LGBTQ community? Or what if my coworker's kiddo is a trans kid? And if I can support them, that's a great way. If my language is supportive of that, like, what a great way to support my colleague. So there's lots of ways. It may not impact your family directly, but there are trans and LGBTQ people all around you. I always like to remind folks of that.
I think you're helping make it okay to talk about it, and okay to maybe screw it up. But as long as, like what you said, if your heart is in the right spot, your intentions are good.
Always remember that if our intentions are good, we still have impact on people. So intentions and impact, and being able to recognize that and see, like, I hurt this person's feelings. We talk about the art of the apology at One Iowa, and that just means you quickly apologize. So if I were to misgender you and say, Mandy, I believe your pronouns are she and her. Yes.
Yep.
So if I said, oh, Mandy, he's going to, and I would stop myself and say, oops, I meant to say, I'm so sorry. Mandy, she's going to go to the store after work. And then I move on and then I say it right the next time. But as soon as we start to say, oh my God, Mandy, I cannot believe that I just misgendered you. I'm so sorry. I just have really been working on this. It's been so hard. Like, don't you feel a little uncomfortable? Like, and then it became about me instead of me saying, I'm so sorry for this mistake that I made. I see you as a human and let's move on together. And then the next time you see them, you say their pronouns correctly, you say their name correctly. And you don't bring up, oh my gosh, I can't believe I misgendered you that one time. Like, that's not doing anybody any favors.
Good point. Okay, now I'm thinking about pandemic specific or related issues. You talked about the importance of having that caring adult, affirming adult in your life. But what if you don't? And especially during the pandemic, what if kids don't? And I'm thinking about the kids that are still virtual learners or virtual learners, and just that we haven't had very natural social interactions. We've had to work really hard at making those connections with people that we care about or people that support us. What can you speak to that? What kind of impact do you think that all of this is having or has had, and what can we do to make things better today?
Yeah, so a lot of times there are affirming teachers, people in the kiddo's life who really do support them. And if they haven't had that access to them, that can be a really big struggle. So there are a few resources like the Trevor Project, GLAD, and here locally, Iowa Safe Schools, they do support groups at schools. And I know that they're doing a lot of virtual hangouts and things like that. So Iowa Safe Schools would be such a great place for kiddos to connect. But it's just a reminder that we need to be, if we have queer kiddos at home, to really be asking them what kind of supports do they need, helping them find support groups in the community or online. Like, the power of the internet, I know, can be so terrible, but also what a great way to get kiddos connected to other people who are maybe going through something similar. And so a good reminder to check in with your kiddos' friends, like having those open conversations with your kids. And so, say my son's best friend is a queer kid and his parents aren't accepting of him, like, can you check in on that kiddo? Make sure that they know about Iowa Safe Schools, those sorts of things. I think because it can be so incredibly isolating. We have to remember also, there are also some kiddos who are so thankful for this time at home because they're just not comfy being in public quite yet as themselves. And so I think there's good and bad, but we also have to remember how isolated and how so many kids don't have affirming parents, and what a sticky situation that puts them in. It's one of the reasons why we believe in training healthcare providers. So if that kiddo can get to the doctor, they can talk about some of those things with their doctor, because we need adults in kids' lives that are affirming.
I think easing back into more social interactions and in-person schooling is going to be important for a lot of people. Anybody with any kind of social anxiety or difficulty interacting with their peers, it's going to be a transition back. So you're right. And then you were speaking about, I think it would be good if after the fact here, and we are coming close to our 15 minutes, if you could put some of the internet is a big, wide, busy place. And I think it would be great if you pointed out, you mentioned the Trevor Project and another one that the name's escaping me, but if you could put like some of those ones that are tried and true, high quality supports and programs that if you could put those in the comments, we can put them in after. I think that would be good.
Yeah. I think that if I had to give you a last takeaway, it would be to not assume that your kids are straight and that your kids are cisgender. Like, we just don't know. And I think there is a myth that like it's trendy or it's some sort of phase for kids to explore this. No, kids are coming out because there are more out people around them. And it's so incredibly powerful when you can see yourself um, in that famous musician that you see, or in someone who's a leader in your community, and it's like, oh wait, they're living their lives and I don't have to live in the secret. And so kiddos are coming out and being more open with that. They're using they them pronouns because they don't fit into this binary. And if we can lean in to like the uncomfort of that, it can be such a beautiful thing. Because I think when I talk to people who have very different views than I do, we come back to like, all I want is for my family to be happy and healthy and to thrive. And I think as parents, that's something that is so that I think that we want, right? Like, we want them to grow up, and I want them to be like kind human beings.
Mhm.
And if I can help support them on the way there, like, let's do that. So it's scary and there's a lot of unknown, but there's also a lot of resources for parents too. So like, if this is something you want to learn more about, there are lots of resources out there of how you can be. PFLAG is a national organization, but like, they have so many resources for parents. So I just encourage you to get outside of your comfort zone and don't assume folks' gender or sexual orientation.
Let's make some happy, healthy, successful kids.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time and all your information. It's fantastic. Anybody have any
Yeah, any last, I have a couple minutes if anybody has any questions or things, I would be happy to answer.
well, yeah, Katie does have a question. So I read some really disheartening things about LGBTQ community and the effects of the pandemic and isolation and depression. What can I do to try to help with this? Some of it you touched on. Check in on the kids, check in with the kids, friends. Um, it sounds like if I were to go to a school, you mentioned schools have some resources. Who at the school might, I'm sure it varies school to school, but generally.
Absolutely, it does vary. I think Iowa Safe Schools is your best bet to get resources. And Iowa Safe Schools can connect you to the right folks, but always donating books, like LGBTQ books, to schools, libraries, things like that, pushing in your schools. One of my favorite things to suggest to people is to use your power and privilege. So maybe your kiddos aren't in the LGBTQ community, or you're not, but your voice carries more weight. If you bring it to your school board or your principal that we should be having more options for LGBTQ kiddos, that comes differently than me as a queer parent going. Because sometimes it's like, oh, that you're just trying to do your agenda, where it's like, oh no, this is important because we want happy, healthy kids to be seen. And so tiny things, like having a pride flag, having the trans flag, those things seem silly, but it's so incredibly important. So when my kiddos go to my best friend's house across the street, they walk to their house and they see a pride flag in her planter. It's this symbol of like, these folks, they know that they love us, but it's like, no, they're out there saying like, we love our family. And so those little things are so incredibly important. But using your power and privilege, speaking up in meetings when you hear transphobic and homophobic things, or when you think about LGBTQ kiddos, remember that their voices are always silenced, and how do you help amplify what they're saying?
Awesome. Katie says donating books. What a great idea. It is a good idea. We have, I'm thinking about one. It's something like Girls Like Pink, except when they don't. Do you know that book?
Uh,
I'll,
we have a similar one at our house of like the boy with pink hair. It's like, and it's just really de-gendering those things. My son loves hot pink. He wanted a hot pink bag. He wanted hot pink soccer shoes. And it's like, so many, like, society is telling him like, you shouldn't have that because you're a boy and identify as a boy. And it's like, no, oh my God, just get the pink sneakers. Like, I don't care. And those things seem so little. It's like, just like, how do we support them as their best selves?
awesome. I'll let you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Put
Um,
your
I My email is my first name, Courtney, at oneiowa.org. Please check out our website. We have so many events all throughout the year. All are virtual, and a lot of them are pay what you can. Donating to our organization is a great way to support our work. So we would love to see you at one of those events.
Awesome. And we'll put your link to your website in the comments too. So
Okay, perfect. All right.
anything else that you think should go in the comments, we'll put in there too. So just send it my way and we'll stick it in there.
All
Thank
right.
you for your time today.
Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.